everybody, it's Mike from The Gracious Guest. If you're like a lot of people, you probably have, at least at some point, wondered about why Christianity, why the church has all these rules, right? And you hear this a lot of times. A lot of times it's a criticism for people who have left Christianity, left their faith, or people who are hesitant to even become Catholic. In the first place, they'll say, well, you have all those rules. It's too rigid, it's too regulated, there's too many rules, there's too many things I have to make sure I'm doing so I'm this perfect person. But I think this is a mistake. I think sometimes this reinforces a false conception of what the church even is in the first place. And that's why I've titled this video, No Serves Yes. So, if you look at the list of rules that we have in the church, for example, yes, there's a lot of things that are things we can't do, right? You're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that, you're not supposed to miss Mass, you're not supposed to say certain words, you're not supposed to behave certain ways. Certain sexual practices, for example, many of them, right, are not allowed. There's rules against them. And sometimes people see those things and they say, well, here's the church kind of cramping my style, taking away my freedom. But it's a huge misunderstanding. We have to try to sort this out. Every no serves a yes when it comes to the church and her teachings. What do I mean by that? Well, why, for example, do we have the teaching coming from the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not steal, right? You shall not steal. Well, why? Right? Well, why can't I just take whatever I want? Well, because if you steal, and then this guy steals, and that girl steals, and we all start getting into this habit of stealing from each other, what are we doing? We're not just breaking a rule. We are creating a culture of theft, right? You're creating a culture where no one's property is respected, and you always have to look over your shoulder. Trust itself completely just falls apart. In other words, the no that we see in the Ten Commandments about thou shalt not steal is at the service of a greater yes. A yes to trust, a yes to a culture where we work together and protect each other and protect each other's property and respect each other. That's greater. That's greater than the negativity, in a sense, of the law. Thou shalt not murder. Well, you can't just show up to God and say, oh, well, hey, I never killed anybody, you got to let me into heaven. There's more to it than that, right? And Jesus points that out in the Gospel. In the Sermon on the Mount, he says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not kill, you know? And he talks about it, he says, well, that's not enough. I'm paraphrasing, but he says, it's not enough to just not murder the person in the cubicle next to you. Okay, hey, good for you, but what if you're sitting there all day thinking about murdering that person? Well, I never did it. Yeah, but can't you see that there's something wrong with that picture, right? You know, the restriction on physically harming another person, the restriction that the church, in a sense, places on treating sexual relations as if it's just like a game or some sort of fun activity, as opposed to a recognition of the value and the dignity of a person that I am committed to in marriage for my whole life, right? That's the yes that the no protects. It's like a fence around a playground. Imagine you have a playground that's not too far from the road, right? You see these sometimes. Well, who's complaining about the fence around the playground? Oh, these rules. You know, it doesn't make any sense, right? If you went by a playground that was right by a highway that didn't have a fence up, I would wager you might actually pull off and go in and talk to them and say, hey, you got to get a fence around this thing to protect these kids, right? So, think about it that way. Every single rule in the Catholic Church, and I mean every one of them, guys, every one, is somehow a gift to the church from Christ, from God himself, to protect us and to help us to flourish as human beings are meant to flourish. Every no that the church issues, every one of them, every no is related to and tethered to and at the service of a much greater and more beautiful and more fulfilling yes. We will only be truly happy, truly fulfilled as human persons when we live according to the yes to God, the yes to one another in generous, self-giving love. So, just a few things to think about today. Love to talk to you more about this. If you want to hit me up over on the website, check out thegraciousguest.org. Look at more YouTube videos on the page. Subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Hopefully these videos help. Just some food for thought for you for your week. Hoping to help you, get a little closer to Christ and to one another along the way. So this is Mike from thegraciousguest.org. Until next time, Don't forget to wonder. Take care.